Right then, episode 5, isn't it?
Maybe.
Yeah, bi-weekly twin turbo update. So I've got a bit more done than I thought I was going to. I mentioned in the last video I went off-roading, was going off-roading the KA, which I've now done. Obviously that did take some time out of the weekend from doing this project. So still got plenty to show you. I'm pleased with what's gone on. You've got some questions, haven't you?
Yes. The thing that people in the comments want to know most.
Okay, go on.
How much power is this going to make?
Yeah, people keep private messaging me this question as well. Ultimately, I don't know. It's experimental for me. I have an idea of what power I believe it should make. I'm only going to be running around £6 a boost because I'm on a standard internals on the engine. So it's 935 to 1 compression ratio on standard pistons and rods. I've spec'd the turbos for that power I think I'll be making, and for the spool up time, because the reason I'm using 2 turbos is they'll spool up quicker than a big single turbo and give me that mid-range power. Ultimately, I'm not shooting for a horsepower number at the top here. I don't really care what it makes at the top end. I'm doing this for mid-range pulling power, so get up and go and towing power. The reason this idea was developed or came about was because when towing the KA, I wanted a little bit more get up and go so I could keep up with modern twin turbo diesel cars that have bags of torque in a very narrow power band, and the towing off-roaders and getting up to cruise speed of 50 miles an hour a lot quicker than I am. Not that we'll be racing with trailers, that's a bad idea.
Never.
So yeah, that's why I don't have the answer to that question. Ultimately, I guess my calculations are based on about 300 horsepower. 320 would be nice, but yeah, it doesn't matter what that top figure is to me at the moment. That's not why this is being done, but it should be circa around 300 horsepower. And I'd also like to justify that, because a lot of people might sort of start shouting in the comments now, because oh, they're doing all this and you don't know what power you're going to be running. I watched Guy Martin's JCB, world's fastest JCB thing on the telly the other night. Awesome. I love Guy Martin, great guy, gets involved in some brilliant projects. And with JCB's, let's face it, probably a huge budget for that project, and using one of the UK's biggest sort of engine tuning developing companies. They do engines with Gatti, Ferrari and everything. They wanted 1,000 horsepower of their diesel tractor engine, and the first time they ran it up on the dyno, they hit 500. And then had to go back to the drawing board and redevelop parts on the engine, and then they hit 800, and they ran it at 800, so they only hit 80% of what they set out for. They hit 800 out of the 1,000. So I could go and tell you this was going to make 450 horsepower, but it wouldn't really matter if it only made 300, because this is a development project. So it makes what it makes. We're doing this for peak torque around the mid-rev range. Who knows where it will end up though, because I might end up going for forged internals and something like that later on. Don't know.
Might, he says.
Might, he says, yeah. Shall I show you what I've done then?
Please.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, the up pipe that feeds the front turbo from the other bank is now complete. The only thing that's not finished is the bracket on here. Do you want a torch? You stand there, I'll get a torch. So yeah, the up pipe's now complete. I've got flexi in there. So the only thing that's not complete on that up pipe now is a support bracket for the turbo. Obviously I can't have that turbo mounted on top of a flexi just sort of floating around in mid-air. So it is still bolted onto its suspension mount at the moment, but there will be a bracket made from the top of the engine mount, so it will be on the engine side of the rubber, going up to the flange here. Nobody chuckled in the background and said, oh, you said flange. So yeah, got that bit done. Also, this pipework is now complete this side. Before the internet explodes, don't worry, these are just temporary. The new hose clamps that are the right size have turned up, so there won't be long dangly tails on them, which I keep catching my sleeve on when I'm working on it.
I'll stop typing now then.
Yeah. So the next thing under the bonnet really is making all of this pipework. Take the nice compressed warm air from the turbochargers to the front of the charge cooler.
I mean, just like that ought to do it.
Do you reckon?
Yeah,
Bit of gaffer tape.
Yeah, a bit of silicon
Elastic
sealer.
bands. Ah, that's the one, yeah, PU sealer, that'll do it. So that's the next bit for me under here, really. Yeah, should we move on?
The internet has another question.
Oh, okay.
I want you to twin turbo my Rover V8.
Yes.
How much will it cost?
First of all, you need to buy a Rover V8.
Yes.
Because I know you own a Land Rover, but we won't
Yes.
go any further on that conversation.
No.
So cost, it's another don't know at the moment really. This is my project, I'm doing it in my own time, I'm privately funding it, it's going to go on my car, it's my little baby. So I'm still buying parts at the moment. I'm buying what I need, I'm sourcing the parts, good quality parts, obviously they were original, brand new Garrett turbos. The water pump I've just ordered for the charge cooling system is a Bosch water pump. It's not being done cheap, it's being done to last and being done to the best of my abilities. So, in terms of costs, I don't think it's going to be cheap by any means. The turbos weren't cheap, thousands. I don't know. I don't want to put a figure on it yet.
I'll give you 50 quid for it.
No.
And a curly whirly.
Ooh, you might be talking now. They get stuck in your teeth though and pull your fillings out, curly whirlies. Whisper Gold, that'd probably do it.
Ah, alright.
Charge cooler radiator is in, only it's not.
Well, it's there.
Yeah, it's there. So I had to put a different slam panel on here because the one that was on this car was slightly bent, which didn't help matters. As you can see, it just fits. I haven't made any brackets up yet because the front of my car is a little bit different. I have a winch on the front of mine, which makes this area here very different. So I'll make brackets up for this when I fit it to my car. At the moment, I've just kind of angle ground this area out. Obviously on mine, when I do the proper one, I will use a hole saw and cut a hole in the correct place. This just makes it a lot easier to work that out because I can kind of fit this on my car once the brackets are made for this radiator and work out exactly where that hole needs to be, rather than ending up with a bit of metal that looks like a bit of cheese with lots of holes in it. That radiator's now, there's space for it there, and I've just, as I mentioned a second ago, ordered the Bosch water pump that will circulate the water around that radiator and the charge cooler, which then leaves a header tank and hose fittings for this system as well. Something else just mentioned, got the idle pipework in there, I don't know if we saw that earlier. And then that leaves the breather system to do under here as well, which I've got some ideas on, but I don't even want to look at until I've got all of this pipework done, because space is becoming a premium. Yeah. Shall we go underneath?
You'll want to sit down, the internet has another question.
Okay. Is it one I don't really want?
Yes.
Okay, go on.
So why,
Yep.
when I called RPI before,
Yep.
did they say that we don't do forced induction?
Okay, because things change with time. It's development. It's we haven't done forced induction. We have worked on a few cars with forced induction. Ultima GTR kit car that had a Rotrex supercharger on. We've done a supercharged Defender 9050th. We put a 4.6 in. It was originally a 4 litre. So we have worked on cars that are forced induction. But no, we've never offered forced induction as an upgrade package. Reasons for that are we don't know longevity here. I want to put as many miles on my car once this is fitted very quickly to make sure there's going to be no long-term issues. I am slightly tempted to maybe raise the boost pressure past 6 psi to see where the breaking point is. I already have bought myself a spare engine for parts in case I do blow my engine up, finding out where the breaking point is of parts, because it's important to know those things if you are going to offer this as a product to customers. The other thing that makes this difficult to actually offer customers as well is, as you can see, there's a lot of custom work here, and this will only fit a Thor P38 Range Rover. So if you phone up with a GEMS Range Rover, this ain't going to fit. We've got to make something custom there. Obviously we know the engine internals the same, can handle the same power, but every single different vehicle would require a different setup here. And who knows, in some applications maybe a different style of forced induction might be better, single turbo. So should this go ahead as something we offer customers, then each and every case would be taking individually. But if you phoned up a year ago, 2 years ago, or much further, we didn't do forced induction, we still might not, although as you've seen with the KA, it's not like me to fail on projects, so I'm sure this will work, and will be something we can offer customers if it's right for them. Because we get lots of people phone up asking for lots of power, and then when you speak to them you find out actually they don't really want that power. They actually want something that drives nice and smooth, and if you put wild camshafts in engines to make massive horsepower and actually aspirated, they get very lumpy idles and don't really drive nice. Did I answer the question?
I think so, somewhere in there. I kind of fell asleep for a second.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's because you look like you didn't get any sleep last night.
I didn't.
Okay.
But I can highly recommend seeing the chats if you ever get the chance.
Okay. Should we put the ramp up and have a look underneath?
Yes.
Okay. Right, the crossover pipe is complete then. Well, almost. So still got to make my hanger off the front of the sump here, which will be on a rubber cotton reel bush. You can see it's all welded up now. This will be, I've mentioned this in every video I think, we'll have heat insulators in the correct place to protect the starter motor from the heat. Sump, I'll either have these ceramically coated or wrap them as well, again to help with heat, because that's another question the internet's been throwing up, actually saying how much heat will this generate? My reply is lots, but it's manageable. So yeah, got 2 flanges here.
You said flanges?
Yeah, that's what normally happens in the workshop when so reason for that is obviously it makes this pipe far easier to put in, and as I mentioned in the last video, to change the starter motor now, this side of the crossover pipe actually needs removing. So having the flange here means that, this can be removed. So what I'm calling the up pipe is now on, and the flexi is in there as well, just to give the pipework some room to expand and contract as it needs to. And as I mentioned when we were up above, that's why that turbo now needs its own kind of support bracket. I think I would do one anyway, because that is a very long track of pipe to actually hold a turbo up and would fracture in the end. So yeah, that's getting a support bracket. But that is all in and done. That pretty much finishes what I've had time to do. I'll put the car down and we'll end it there, I reckon.
Hold on.
No, go on.
There's one more question.
Okay.
Why not go supercharged?
There's been supercharged P38 Range Rovers in the past. I'm not actually sure if anyone's done a twin turbo one or not. If anyone has, I'd be, it'd be great to see, much like the KA, somebody's done one of those before, a chap called Craig Pegg. So full credit to him for being sort of the first one I know of being road legal and everything. The main reason I didn't want to go supercharged is because my logic is I still want some fuel economy on cruise, on a run, and you are always turning that supercharger. So you're always consuming power to spin the supercharger, and you're always actually generating that compression of air. So if you're cruising very light throttle, say 2,500 RPM, 60, 70 miles an hour, you're still rotating that supercharger at the same speed because you're at 2,500 engine RPMs. So your supercharger is working hard and compressing air. Whether you're using that air or not isn't relative, but you're actually consuming energy to do that. With turbochargers, that doesn't happen. I've had lots of turbocharged Japanese import cars in the past, and 400 horsepower, this wasn't my car, but I've been out in 400 horsepower Skylines, and on a cruise we're still averaging mid-20s to the gallon, because you're not using boost pressure to cruise. This engine cruises at 60, 70 miles an hour very nicely, returns 20 to the gallon, maybe 21, 22 to the gallon. So with turbochargers, my logic, hope, is that I'll still get good MPG on a run. Obviously, if you're using that power to accelerate and etc., that's when your fuel economy is going to drop. That's why turbochargers, not superchargers. And yeah, like I said, seen lots of superchargers under the bonnets of these. It probably is the easier install to do because there's far less pipework involved. Definitely so, because you don't have to touch the exhaust side. But I like to be different as well, and this is different, isn't it?
The answer could have been much shorter.
I can shorten anything, but
Just say, because turbo.
Because turbo, yeah. There's one other thing I was going to do in this video I mentioned last time that we haven't, so I'll drop the car down and we'll do that.
Alright.
Okay. Yeah, so the last point, I did sort of touch on this saying we would cover it in this video. Injectors, fueling. So my car's LPG converted, so I've got 2 fuel systems to actually sort for this turbo setup. Petrol side is obviously going to be the one I do first, and the gas can then follow. So this is a standard Bosch injector, and I want to be able to put some more fuel in via the injector. The ECU will obviously be fully mapped once this is all set up and done, but we might run into a limit of fuel through these standard injectors, so getting some larger injectors in is the key. Now, larger injectors for the Bosch Thor system is not easy. These Bosch injectors come in 3 different sizes. This is the medium size, and it's very difficult to find a larger injector without having to go up in size on the length of the injector and then modify the fuel system, which I don't really want to do. These are a 4-hole injector, and if I hold these still, Steve tells me he might be able to zoom in on these and get a picture. So the green injector that's standard is a 4-hole injector. The new injector I'm going to be using is a 12-hole injector, which means we get far better atomization of the fuel. It creates a much finer mist and mixes in with the air, which means it burns faster and more efficiently. Which means we generate a smoother engine, better throttle response and more power. Have you zoomed in on that?
I have.
Am I holding them still enough?
Yes,
Almost.
although I'm not holding the camera very still.
Yeah, you've got a gimbal which helps you.
Everyone has motion sickness now.
Okay, so yeah, the new injector we're running is 12 point, and it's also got an extended nozzle, so it actually pushes the fuel out more into the centre of the airflow, which again is good for mixing it with the air. Also, I've managed to source a fuel pressure regulator, so Thor engines, unlike all of the previous injection systems, don't run a return line, they run a deadhead system. So fuel pump is in the fuel tank, and it has a regulator built inside. One fuel line goes up to the front. That is regulated at 3.5 bar on a Thor engine. On the earlier engines, it'd be far simpler for me because I'd just put one of our adjustable fuel pressure regulators and turn the pressure up slightly. But I've managed to source a 4-bar regulator that fits in that pump. So I'm increasing to 4-bar and going up to this size of injector, and that gives me, we've done a lot of flow testing on our injector test bed, and that will increase my fuel loading by 35%. Which means the ECU obviously at tick over, and at a very low boost pressure we're going to be turning the ECU down, and that gives us better tuning capability. The reason for not just simply increasing fuel pressure on the Bosch injectors was when we tested these at 4-bar on the standard injector, the results were incredibly varied, ranging from I think we went like 12% on one injector we tested being the smallest increase, and like 35-40% on other injectors, and we tested a lot of injectors to see if we had dud ones, but no, at 3.5 bar they're quite consistent, and when we stepped up to 4 they weren't handling that pressure very well, whereas these injectors that we've managed to source, which again are a Bosch injector, handled that fuel increase with a really stable result. So 4-bar and a 12-point injector should do our fueling. The end of this video. Hopefully there won't be too many questions generated off of it, and hopefully in a couple of weeks' time I'll have a bit more done. Although it's getting pretty cold here in the evenings now.
It's a bit cold here now.
Yeah.
And we've got the heating on.
Yeah. Right. See you next time.